Okay, let's call the meeting to order. This is the March 20th, 2019 City of River Falls, Town of River Falls, ETZ Committee. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we have the roll, please?
Mike Wolsey.
Here.
Susan Reese.
Here.
Craig Hinsman.
Here.
Diana Smith.
Here.
Brad Mogan.
Here.
Wayne Svoboda.
Here.
Next item is to confirm compliance with the notice of this meeting, and that will be given to us by the clerk.
Notice of this meeting was posted in 3 public places: City Hall, River Falls Police Department, and the Public Library, as well as published in the River Falls Journal on March 7th and March 14th. In addition, notices were mailed to property owners within 300 feet.
Next item is the reading of the announcement of proceedings.
2017 Wisconsin Act 67 changed how conditional use permits and special use permits are considered and approved. Decisions concerning special use permits must be based upon substantial evidence, which is defined as follows. Substantial evidence means facts and information other than merely personal preference or speculation, directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a condition use permit, and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. The requirement of substantial evidence makes the approval process quasi-judicial rather than legislative. In other words, the committee will function like a court. The committee must give a full and fair hearing to any person whose property interests are affected by the matter before the committee. Members participating in a quasi-judicial decision must be impartial. If they cannot be impartial, they must recuse themselves. The concurring vote of 4 members of the committee are required to approve the special use permit. If the committee is unsure if the applicant should be granted the special use permit at the end of the hearing, then the applicant has not met their burden of proof, and the committee must deny the permit. The procedure for tonight's meeting will be as follows. The chair will open the public hearing. The applicant will be sworn in by the clerk and present evidence to support the request. Staff will also provide a report after being sworn in. Any member of the public wishing to speak will also be sworn in and may provide testimony related to the matter at hand. The committee may ask questions of the applicant, staff, and public. Once the committee has heard all of the necessary facts, the chair will close the hearing, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether to approve or deny the request. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded and will become a part of public record. Please be sure that your microphone is on.
Okay, and I'm going to read the overview of the matter coming before the ETC Committee. The ETC Committee has been called to review a request for a special use permit in the extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction in the town of River Falls. And so at this point, we're going to open up a public hearing. And I'm going to start with a question. Did any of the committee members make any site inspections?
Just from the road, Highway 29.
Okay.
And then back around the Sterling Ponds development.
Okay. Anybody else?
Other than driving past on Highway 29, no.
Maybe
The
on your
same.
way here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Did any committee members have any related correspondence or ex parte communications to disclose regarding this matter?
No.
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 Okay. Would the applicant like to step forward and provide a statement? I believe you, have we sworn in? Okay.
Each individual will be sworn in prior to their testimony or the facts that they're giving you.
Okay. Thank you.
Please state your name.
Dan Lawrence.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter to come before us today?
I do.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Dan Lawrence, and also give you a little history on both myself and our company. I was born and raised in small town, Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, about 30 minutes south of Madison. Graduated from Parkview High School with a graduating class of 47 kids in 1993. I enlisted in the Air Force immediately upon graduation. I served 15 years, from 1993 to 2008. I was a helicopter pilot, combat search and rescue. I have 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, and that's part of kind of what draws us to this property and kind of why I want to bring it up as well. But Wisconsin's near to my heart, near to my family, and we're a veteran-owned company, so I wanted to bring those things and introduce myself from that perspective. Obviously, we're looking at the property, West 9194 and I think 9188 on Highway 29. I'll start by kind of giving a little history on how we got here. It's talked about in the standards, but I want to say it was May of 2018, I reached out to Scott Simpson. I've been looking kind of in the area to try to relocate our business here. And going through that, he introduced me to Carrie Schreiner with the City of River Falls, and we were looking in the City of River Falls. The key that I need, because there's actually a big hub zone that is located in the City of River Falls and extends out to the east. Essentially, right, Highway 29 kind of runs right in the middle there. Maybe it's the southern border of it. The reason why that's important is I'm working federal contracts for the government. So we are a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. There's a lot of things that helps with from a contractual standpoint. There's also a term called hub zone, which if you have that rating is also very beneficial to grow our business. To be a hub zone, though, you can't just have a building in a hub zone. You have to live in that hub zone as well. In fact, 35% of your employees or owners have to live in the hub zone. So we were very specifically looking for a property that we could live in and operate our business out of. 98% of our business, we don't really touch anything. It's drop ship. We do national work. 98% of our business is national work. So we're shipping to different parts of the country or subcontracting out crews in different parts of the country. So we don't take up a lot of physical space from a business perspective. Most of what we're doing is on the phone and via email. Kind of exhausted our search in the City of River Falls, and Carrie, when I was looking at the hub zone, I had said, well, is it possible maybe to get a property outside the city that's still in that hub zone? And that's when Carrie directed me to Jerome. And in talking with Jerome, he actually called my attention to this property. So that's kind of the history of kind of how we've gotten here today. With that being said, I just kind of want to touch on, as we look through the special use standards, kind of our perspective on why we believe we meet all those standards. And I'll try and go through each of these fairly briefly. For E1, the intent of the exclusive ag zoning is to preserve productive agricultural soils. The soils that on the property that we're seeking to buy are currently only 36% productive, which doesn't even meet the state-approved criteria for agricultural preservation. That 36% equates to about 19.44 acres of the 54 acres on that property. With that being said, we don't plan on changing the way that land is being used today. There's 8 acres in CRP, and I think there's 22 acres that are being rented out, leased out to a local farmer. We intend to continue both those. We have no intention of developing or building or changing that footprint whatsoever. So from an agricultural perspective, no agricultural soils will be negatively impacted or diminished by the approval of our application for special use. E2, potential for conflict with agricultural uses. As stated in answer to E1, existing agricultural soils on the property will continue to be used as they are today. The rest of the property isn't suited for agriculture, so there's no real big plan or hope that the rest of that property, it's a bluff, it's pretty steep, and it's graded in, Wisconsin's been graded, I think, Class 4. A lot of that property is graded as Class 4 soils, which are not, top producing farmland anyway. So that property isn't going to be turned into a farm anytime, a fully functioning, self-sustaining farm anytime in the future. E3, need for the proposed use for a location in an agricultural area. Touch on the definition of rural home occupation, which is unique to an exclusively agricultural zoning. We need a property, as I stated before, we need a property that we can both live in and operate out of, which is why the property is appealing to us. And as I stated before, this property resides in a federal hub zone, which is also beneficial for us from a business perspective. Availability of alternate locations, again, kind of like I talked about, I've been looking personally in River Falls area for about 2.5 years. And then I started actively engaging as I was watching the market, watching rentals, watching different things come about. Started to actively engage in May of last year. So really feel like I've done everything we can to find the right property for us. And all that research is led us. And I had a snippet of the email that I sent on December 17th of last year to Carrie, which kind of started my introduction to Jerome and then kind of us getting on this path here. And it's really, I mean, this property fits perfectly with our needs, and it is the only one we found in either the town or the city of River Falls that meets everything we're looking for. So. Compatibility with the E5, compatibility with existing or permitted uses on adjacent lands. We will be 100% compatible and consistent with existing uses. If you look at the farm side around you, you see homes and stone and steel buildings, and we're going to look the same. We'll fit right in. We won't look any different. We're not going to have a big manufacturing facility. We're not going to have 25 rigs out in front of the property. In fact, you won't see any rigs. We don't have any rigs, any company trucks or anything like that. So you won't see, we will look just like the rest of the area there. So we won't have any adverse impact to any of the adjacent lands. The deliveries we receive, because again, most of our stuff is drop ship, most of the deliveries we receive are FedEx and UPS. So if you have Amazon delivering to your house or FedEx or UPS delivering to your house, it'll look the exact same for us. There are an occasion where we do get a semi in, but it's probably, I think we're operating like once every 2 months we'll see a semi. It's very, very rare that we get a semi in. E6, productivity of the lands involved. Productivity of the land involved is low. As I said, a lot of it's rated as Class 4 farmland. And again, as stated in E1, only 36% of these existing soils on the property are productive, which is that 19.44 acres. Ironically, 22 acres. We got 8 acres in CRP and 14 acres that are being rented out currently. So got a little bit of a 3 acre slush fund there, if you will. And to look things at another perspective, with the most recent state statutes, property, if this property was just in the town of River Falls, I know it's an ETZ, so it kind of, it's a little different animal. But if it was sitting in the town of River Falls, it would have been reclassified ag residential based on new state statutes. So I think that's an important perspective to look at. E7, location of the proposed use as to reduce to a minimum the amount of productive land converted. The existing house, there's an existing abandoned house on the property, which is on the edge of the field. We're going to remove that, and we're going to put the new steel building we propose will actually go behind where that current greenhouse sits today. We'll demo that house, fill in, and then put the steel building behind, and it will run parallel. So the building's it's a 48 by 116 foot building, and we can go through the drawings. That 116 foot will run with Highway 29. And we got on the east side is where the residence will be, and you can see we have a wraparound porch, stonework, that sort of thing. Again, we want it to be very aesthetically pleasing. We plan on putting in tall pine trees as the porch ends. We'll have tall pine trees again to break up the contour and to give it a good look. Oh, thank you. That probably would help. So this is the east facing side here. Oh, can I see part of the building. There we go.
Can you see the zoom here?
Oh, yeah.
Is that too big? That might be too big.
You could scroll.
So this is what you see at the west end. The idea here is plant tall pines along the west end. So as you're driving from the city of River Falls down, I guess you would be going eastbound on Highway 29, then you wouldn't just see the building, you'd see pine trees. And then this is the east end. So this is what you'd see as you're coming into the city of River Falls down Highway 29. We got the covered porch wrapped around with the stonework and the wainscoting on the outside. And then, let's see. This is the part that would be visible to the road. This would parallel Highway 29. And then we have this open spot here, and this is again where we'd look to plant some nice tall pine trees. Again, break things up, not make it look more aesthetically pleasing. This is the back, so this would be the north-facing part. So the nice thing about this, the way we have it is, if you look right here, this is actually where we'd have the receiving area of the business. So any UPS truck or FedEx truck that drives, they would drive back behind our building. So so deliveries wouldn't even be visible from the Highway 29 as people are driving by. So it would all be obscured. And this is just the garage for the living quarters. Anything? That's just another picture of the elevation. So yeah, so this is an answer to E7. So I want to give a feel for what the building is that will look like that we're proposing. One, that this will fit in with E5, which is compatibility of adjacent lands. And two, that we're going to reduce the minimum amount of productive land converted. So essentially, because this building is 116 foot long, it's going to sit in the existing yard as it is today. We have to put a sway up above because we have to run. The reason I really wanted to run vertical with the north to south is how I wanted to run the building, and then put the residential end on the side closest to Highway 29. The challenge we had there was, as you guys can imagine, with that bluff coming down, and it was surprising. It's a little deceiving, the grade. From one end of from the front end of the existing house to like just past the garage, or up past the garage, it's 8 foot of elevation change. So excavation costs were going to be pretty high to dig out and get a flat building surface. If we ran north-south, it would have probably been a little bit more of an eyesore from that perspective of all the digging and having to build into the hill and everything else. So that forced us to flip it east-west. Also, that's why we shortened the building length to 116 feet to help fit in there, and also to not impact the existing agricultural land as it is sitting there today. E8, current and future need for public services created by the proposed use. All the existing services are there, well, septic, electric, and currently the property serviced by the River Falls municipal utility. We have all the services we need as it sits there today, so we don't need anything additional or out of the ordinary. E9, availability of adequate public services. Like I said, the existing services 100% meets all our needs. E10, effect of the proposed use on water or air pollution, soil erosion, and rare or irreplaceable natural resources. We will have no effect on any of those. Again, we're not adding in any new services, anything else like that. It's all existing. We're rebuilding on and tearing down an abandoned residential building. We will meet proper highway setbacks as they are in today's coding. And we won't add or create any air or water pollution other than what normal human beings do living every day. So from that's our perspective on why we believe we meet the conditions for special use. And that pretty much concludes my statement.
Thank you. All right. Next would be presentation by city staff.
Good evening, everybody. The city received an application from Ms.
Just one moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Swearing
okay.
in.
Please state your name.
Brandy Howe.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter to come before us today?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll begin again. The city received an application from Mr. Dan Lawrence for a special use permit to construct what we were told at the time was a 50 by 150 feet, which equals 750 square foot steel building to be used as a single family home with a home occupation at W9188, W9194 State Highway 29. The subject site is zoned A1 exclusive ag in the ETZ and is located along State Highway 29 east of the city of River Falls and the town of River Falls. The site is 2 parcels, and with both of them combined, the entire site is 54 acres. The site contains 2 existing principal structures. One is a vacant single-family home situated on the south end of the property. The other is a second single-family home that is understood to be presently occupied. The applicant is in the process of purchasing the 2 properties that make up the subject site. It is staff's understanding that the purchase is contingent on the applicant receiving approval of the above requested special use permit. If approved, the applicant plans to move forward with the purchase of the property and demolish the existing 1,100 square foot single-family home and replace it with the proposed structure. It's also staff's understanding that based on conversations with the applicant, that the existing single-family house to the north, which is currently a rental, would continue to be used as a rental in the future under the proposal. The applicant states in his narrative that the 22 acres of land currently being farmed will continue to be rented as farmland to a local farmer. The applicant anticipates the proposed 7,500 square foot structure. He anticipates building the proposed structure in the vicinity of the existing structure that would be demolished. About 2,500 square feet of the new building would be finished as a single-family home, and the remaining 5,000 would be used for personal storage of vehicles, ATV, boat trailer, lawn equipment, etc. A small section of the building would be used for business purposes. The applicant has not provided building or site plans at the time that the application was provided, but indicated to the city that the proposed structure would be comparable in style to one located at N 8481, 850th Street in the town of River Falls, and the example building plan that is included in your packet and shown on the screen is the example provided and not the one that the applicant brought tonight. The applicant's business is TL Lighting, which is primarily drop ship. It's our understanding that this means that the home business would not receive or ship materials, but rather most of the business transactions would be paper transactions conducted in an office within the home. The property is located in the U.S. Small Business Administration hub zone, which provides preferential government contract awards to eligible businesses located within the zone. The applicant contacted city staff in the latter part of 2018 looking for an existing building and property in the hub zone. However, no suitable locations were found at that time within the city limits. So now we're moving into the analysis portion of the report. Again, the subject property is zoned exclusive ag in the city/town of River Falls extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction. The A1 district provides for exclusive agricultural uses. The intent of the A1 zone is to preserve agricultural lands, maintain agriculture as a permanent viable land use and economic activity, avoid conflicting land uses, and control development on the city's fringe to ensure logical future development and service provision. Permitted land uses in the A1 district include farming, agriculturally related dwellings, farm-related structures, and in-season road stands. It is notable that single-family homes that are not related to agriculture are not permitted by right and may only be permitted with a special use with a home occupation. Specifically, the ordinance reads that the following may be permitted as a special use: single-family dwellings exceeding one per farm operation for occupancy by a person or family earning a substantial part of livelihood from the farm operation, or single-family dwellings occupied by parents or children of the farm operator. The first special use is related to one or more single-family structures occupied by the farmers. The second is a single-family structure occupied by a close relative of the farm. It's staff's interpretation that the proposed structure does not meet either of these distinctions because the applicant does not intend to personally farm the land or earn a substantial portion of income from farming. The A1 zoning allows the following special uses: home occupations and professions conducted within an accessory to single-family dwelling, that's one, or two, rural home occupations. So this is just a point of clarification, I think. Staff's interpretation is that the proposed use is a home occupation rather than a rural home occupation. So the home occupation definition emphasizes that the home occupation takes place within the place of residence, whereas the rural home occupation takes place on their property at which they reside. So it's a matter of being within the building or outside of the building. So it's staff's interpretation that the applicant's request is most closely related to a home occupation special use permit based on their narrative that the business will be conducted within the home portion of the structure. Please note again that the new structure being proposed is not listed as a permitted by right use with the special use permit. It is staff's interpretation that the home occupation special use is intended for a single-family dwelling occupied by a farmer, the close relative of a farmer or employee of the farmer that is also conducting a small business out of their home. Prohibited uses. The extraterritorial zoning ordinance indicates that all uses not listed as permitted or special uses are prohibited in the A1 district. As noted previously, non-agricultural related single-family dwellings are not permitted by right are not permitted by right uses. As previously stated, it is staff's interpretation that the allowance of a special use permit for home occupations for a farm-operated single-family dwellings occupied by a farm. Let me start that one over. As previously stated, it is staff's interpretation that the allowance of a special use permit for home occupations are for farm-related single-family dwellings occupied by a farm operator or an occupant of an existing non-conforming single-family structure. Thus, it is staff's interpretation that the proposed structure to be used as described by the applicant does not meet the ordinance requirements for permitted or special uses and is therefore prohibited in the exclusive ag district. So that's our interpretation of it not being allowed by right use. Standards for special uses. This is the section where we go through the different criteria that the applicant also went through. So the purposes of the zoning code and the intent of the subsection. Criteria number 1. As stated previously, it was staff's interpretation that the request does not meet the intent of the exclusive ag district. Further, while home occupations are a special use within the A1 district, it's staff's interpretation that the SUP option for home occupations is intended for existing structures that are principally used for agricultural purposes or are existing non-conforming structures. Approval of the special use permit request would allow for new construction of a single-family home with a business that is not agriculturally related. It's staff's interpretation that this is not in line with the intent of the ordinance. Number 2, potential for conflict with agricultural uses. As stated in the applicant's narrative description, the 22 acres of the 54-acre site currently being rented is currently being rented as farmland to a local farmer. The applicant states in the narrative that there is no intent to eliminate the act of farming on the site. Staff does not anticipate a direct conflict with agriculture as a result of the proposed structure, assuming the structure would be sited in an area not presently farmed. Number 3, need of the proposed use for a location in the ag district. To staff's knowledge, there is not a need for this use to be located in the agricultural area. Mr. Lawrence was in contact with city staff several months ago looking for property in the city. However, available spaces did not meet his needs. Number 4, availability of other locations. As noted, staff was not able to find another suitable site for Mr. Lawrence. Number 5, compatibility with existing or permitted uses on adjacent lands. The adjacent land to the north is the River Falls Golf Course in the city. Land to the south of Highway 29 is owned by the Wisconsin DNR and is a conservancy area. and land to the east is agricultural, and land to the west is forest and agriculture. Productivity of the lands involved. The ETZ ordinance prohibits non-farm buildings to be erected on land classified as prime cropland by the NRCS as shown on soil survey maps. Exhibit 4 shows the location of prime soils on the site as determined by NRCS. Location of the proposed use so as to reduce the minimum amount of productive land converted. The applicant states in the narrative that the proposed structure would be located within the setbacks required by code, and approximately the location is the existing green single-family building on the site. The ordinance requires a setback of at least 150 feet from the center line of a state highway and 67 feet from the highway right-of-way. The existing structure is set back 80 feet from the highway center line. Exhibit 5, which is a snippet as shown on the screen, depicts the required setbacks on the site and a conceptual depiction of a 50 by 150 structure. We didn't have an exact site plan, so we just kind of put it in the furthest and the closest that it could to both the west and the south sides and still meet the setbacks. So the little red rectangle is where it would go if it could go as close to the setbacks as it could. Note that the existing structure is not located within the required setback. So the current building, it's kind of hard to see. It's about right here. So it's non-conforming setback-wise. If the applicant were to site the structure shown on the exhibit, the building would overlap with a portion of the active farmland. So you can see that there's a driveway coming up. And then from the images that you saw previously, it looks like that the currently active farm is cropland next to the driveway. Availability of adequate public services and the ability of affected local units of government to provide them without an unreasonable burden. RFMU provides electric to both residential properties. Both residential structures on the property, water and sewer, are not provided at this time. The nearest connections are located at Gulfview Drive or near State Highway 2935. The effect of the proposed use on water or air pollution, soil erosion, and rare or irreplaceable natural resources. Staff does not anticipate that there will be any negative impacts if the structure were to be built on the site. So based on our interpretation of the ordinance, staff recommends that the Extraterritorial Zoning Committee deny the request. If the ETZ committee considers approval of the special use permit, we recommend a series of conditions be applied to it. Staff recommends that this consideration take place carefully, as it would be setting precedent that would pose a fundamental shift in practice to allow new non-conforming uses to be developed in the ETZ area. Further, if the committee decides to approve the special use permit, we recommend the following conditions be imposed. So the first is maintain the current zoning and land use of the ag/forest area until such time that it is annexed into the city. Limit the duration of the special use permit and limit the ability to transfer or renew the permit. In other words, if the property is sold, the permit would no longer be valid. Such limitation would be recorded against the property. Require the building to be sited so that it is not located on prime farmlands. And require that all other extraterritorial zoning ordinance requirements are met, including the building height and setback. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Next item is a call to have folks in the audience, if they would like to speak to this issue. Wanting to speak, step up to the podium. Okay.
Wouldn't our report come next?
I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Let's do that part. Would the town please provide a report on the March 18th town meeting?
I will be doing that report. I'm Jerome Rodwald, zoning administrator for the town of River Falls.
Jerome, can I have you speak in, to the microphone.
Thank you.
and have
I
it-
can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
There.
Just restate your name, please.
Jerome Rodwald.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter to come before us today?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, the town of River Falls met Monday night, March 18th. Following their normal conditional use process, they held a public hearing on Monday, the 18th, at 7:30 p.m. to consider a conditional use permit for Ken Terrahera and TL Lighting LLC for a replacement dwelling which would include 800 square feet of space for a rural home occupation. Chair Diana Smith opened the public hearing and reported on changes made to conditional use public hearing process by Wisconsin Act 67. The act requires that standards governing conditional uses be reasonable and, to the extent practical, measurable. You've heard all this before, but I'm going through the report. The act prohibits a community from basing a conditional use permit decision on personal preferences or future speculation. 3, the act instructs where an applicant meets or agrees to meet all of the conditions, all of the requirements and conditions specified in the ordinance or imposed by the decision maker, the conditional use permit must be granted. Jerome Rodwald, myself, Town of River Falls zoning administrator, presented his finding of fact report dated March 9th, 2019, which is attachment 1 to my handout, regarding an application for a conditional use permit for Ken Terrahera. Dan Lawrence, representing Ken and TL Lighting, presented their dwelling plan and narrative, which is attachment 2, explaining how they met or would meet the criteria set forth in ETZ Ordinance 17.108.040 and 17.108.150 C13 A and B, and also 17.108.070 F and 17.108.150 E 1 through 10. Short discussion followed the report. Chair Diana Smith closed the public hearing. Chair Diana Smith reopened the Plan Commission meeting. Plan Commission made the following motion. The Town of River Falls Plan Commission, after reviewing the information provided by Zoning Administrator Jerome Rodwald in his findings of fact report and information provided by Dan Lawrence, representing Ken Terrahera, at the public hearing on March 18th, 2019, recommends to the River Falls Town Board approval of the conditional use permit for Ken Terrahera and TL Lighting LLC at W9194 Highway 29, based on the following facts. Applicant has met or agreed to meet the standards for a rural home occupation as defined in ETZ Ordinance 17.108.040 and 17.108.150 C13 A and B, and accessory use as defined in Wisconsin Statute 91.01, paragraph 1D, and ETZ Ordinance 17.108.070 F, and standards for special uses in ETZ Ordinance 17.108 E1 through 10. There should be another, it's 150. My typo. 17.108, 150 E1 through 10. That Wisconsin Act 67 instructs that where an applicant meets or agrees to meet all of the requirements and conditions specified in the ordinance or imposed by the decision maker, the conditional use must be approved. Motion by Pat Single, second Kurt Leahy. Motion carried. Plan Commission adjourned. At the regularly scheduled March 18th, 2019 Town Board meeting, following the public hearing and Plan Commission meetings, the Plan Commission member, Siri Smith, brought forth the motion recommending approval of the conditional use permit for Ken Tarahara and TL Lighting LLC. Motion by Joe Mahoney, second by John Gelgowski, to approve the conditional use permit for Ken Tarahara and TL Lighting LLC based on information provided by Jerome Rodwald, Dan Lawrence, and the recommendation for approval by the Plan Commission, and to recommend approval of the conditional use report to the Joint City-Town ETZ Committee at the public hearing dated March 20th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the River Falls City Hall. Any questions there? I see two typos. One of them is way up in the top. It's the town of River Falls, not the Rover Falls. And obviously I left out the 108 on one of them.
150.
I'm not perfect. I'm sorry. That's the best I could do.
Thank you.
I would like to cover with you the finding of fact that I covered with the Town Plan Commission and the Town Board at the public hearing Monday night, and that's attachment 1. Basically, on January 31st, Dan Lawrence, acting as an agent for Ken Tarahara and TL Lighting, filed an application for a conditional use permit for property at W9194 Highway 29. Narrative indicates that the COP was for a rural home occupation. The plan was to remove the old farmhouse, reuse the well, septic, and electric, and build a new accommodation dwelling and accessory building containing up to 800 square feet of storage for the rural home occupation. Definition of rural home occupation is taken from ETZ Ordinance 17-108-040, is a gainful occupation conducted by members of the family only on their property at which they reside. And another definition that doesn't come out of the ETZ ordinance, but it comes out of state statute on exclusive ag, is accessory use. The accessory use as defined in farmland preservation and exclusive ag is a farm residence, a building incidental to farm use, and a business, whether or not associated with an agricultural use. And that's from Wisconsin Statute 91.011D. Taking another ETZ ordinance into effect, existing agricultural uses may continue regardless of extraterritorial zoning. This is from 17-108-070 General Provisions. Replacement or additions to farm buildings, including the residence, destroyed by fire, explosion, or acts of God, and new farm building constructions shall be permitted in the extraterritorial region. From 17-108-150 C13 A and B, you've already heard what the rural home occupations must meet. The combined square footage of the accessory structure and the outside storage shall not exceed 800 square feet. The outside storage and all vehicles, materials, and equipment being stored there shall be screened and or landscaped to such a manner as to prevent it from being visible at any time of the year from the road right-of-way, public and surrounding properties. The 10 conditions required by Wisconsin Statute 91.01 and ETZ Ordinance 17.108-150E that must be considered for conditional uses are the 10 that that Dan spoke to previously. And Brandy went through them. I don't think I have to go through them again. And then for the record, Wisconsin Act 67 has 3 very distinct requirements. The next attachment is Dan's report. And I will talk at some length about the farmland involved. I'm sorry. Yeah, don't know how to do that. Okay, great. All right, there we go. Well, that's clear enough. Now this is a USDA NRCS soil map. 3 colors that are shown. Prime farmland is green. And if you look at the map that Brandy had up before, and I'll show one like that without the colors on it, but the point being here, green is the best soil, class 1 or 2. The aqua or blue is class 3. It says it's important in the state of Wisconsin. The red is not prime farmland. So in the town of River Falls, we can build buildings on not prime farmland. We can put driveways on it, and we don't like to have houses built on it. Where this property is down here. See if I can get it in the corner. And it shows a little better if I can take this same soil map as one that you can see. It's the same map but just colored in. But basically the non-prime farmland is here, goes up through this one. So none of this is productive farmland. It's being farmed, but it's not classified as productive farmland. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what's
Okay.
the date of this map?
What's the date on it?
Yeah. I mean, when...
January, it's off the internet, it's from the site, January 26th, 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the point being here is no farmer is ever going to make a living on this 54 acres. You know, it just can't happen. So the Department of Ag has opened some things up in what you can do as farms are getting larger and people want to live in the country. So this is a prime example of a farm that has been chopped up into smaller pieces, and now we're left with one that is very difficult to find something to do with. In his going through the, let me put up another map. Can you blow that one up a little bit or not?
Can you make it bigger?
Let's see if we can do that, just to make it a little clearer for you. Oh, there you go, look at that. Yeah, there you go. Super, that helps a lot. This shows a 48 by 116 building that runs east and west, just with the proper setback behind the old greenhouse, and shows where the current driveway is. And he's going to, and there's a tree here, so this is not farmland. He's going to have to take, I think, a little bit of farmland to get a driveway that come around the back to the back of his property. But it calculates out to 1/10 of an acre. You know, and again, it's not the best farmland in the world. It's not prime farmland, pure and simple. So it was based on that information that the Town of River Falls Plan Commission and the Town of River Falls Board recommends approval. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to the point. I got ahead of myself there. So if there's anybody wishing to speak to this issue, step up to the podium. Okay, not seeing any. Let's go to the next item. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the public comments that have been made so far?
The one thing, as I was listening to everything, I think rural home occupation is interesting to me, and I want to read that definition again. A gainful occupation conducted by members of the family only, comma, on their property which they reside. Why that's important, and why I believe we 100% meet that definition is we have no employees. Terrahira Lawrence Lighting, that's what TL Lighting stands for. I married Ken's sister, Misa Terrahira. So it's all family business. Ken will live there. I'll be there predominantly, and we operate out of our home. I've been working out of my home since 2011. So everything we're doing business-wise is out of the home. It will be family that lives in that home. We only have 2 employees. The 2, that's me and Ken, who are owners. There's one other owner that's Ko-Terahira, that's Misa's other brother, Ken's brother as well. He's Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps, currently active duty, but he's also an owner. And so he's active duty, so he's an owner, and he's not working for the company currently. But that's, when it says family only, that we are that definition. It is only family. We have no employees, no W-2 employees. It is strictly me and Ken running this company. And we are working exclusively out of our house and out of the small warehouse space that we have currently in Madison, Wisconsin. So as I read rural home occupation, I just struggle to look at it any other way that way we don't fit that definition. So I just wanted to give a little bit more input on who Tail Lighting is. It's not like we have 100 employees or something like that. It's a family-owned business.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Would staff like to respond to anything that was stated?
I guess going through the report and just reading it manner, it's hard to convey, I think, messages. So just to respond to what Mr. Lawrence said, I don't think that we're arguing the fact that a home occupation is for the person that was residing in the home.
Use the microphone, please.
It's on, sir, and I'm talking directly into it. The question at hand is whether or not the single-family home or structure that's going to house a single-family home that's not being used as the structure for the farm, that in itself is not a permitted use based on the zoning ordinance. So that is where the problem arises from a code enforcement point of view. So if we were to allow putting a brand new building there for purposes that are not stated into the permitted uses of the code, if there was a gas station specifically as a use that somebody wanted to bring in there, it's not a permitted use in the district. Single family home that's not related to agriculture is not a permitted use in the district. It explicitly says that it's prohibited. So that's where staff is coming from our interpretation of it's not in line with the intent of the ordinance. If it was an existing structure that somebody lived in and they farmed, they would be allowed to have home occupation there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Thank you. I look at it quite differently. Ken and Dan could have come, bought the property, applied for a dwelling permit, storage shed permit, and received those without a question. The only question that we have here is the rural home occupation. They could have replaced the house. They could have built a shed, as people do continually. But what they're trying to do is, before they invest a lot of money, $500,000, $1 million, to make sure they can get the home occupation permit that they desire. That's just good business. And yes, in what is permitted in the exclusive ag ordinance is a single family residence for someone who makes at least 50% of their living from the farm. Now, I don't know what Ken's wife does or how much she earns, but possibly she could be 50% or better. I don't think we want to get into that. I think we want to go forward. I think this would be a wonderful use for this particular piece of property, and to me it makes sense to allow it to happen through a special use permit, conditional use. That's what they're for. Otherwise it would be a standard use and we wouldn't be here tonight. Questions? Thank you.
Staff response to anything? Okay.
I don't have a response, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you. Yes. Could you no, I'm sorry. Oh. Think of his name. Yep.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, ma'am.
You had explained in this somewhere that the lighting could be, it is used, you're trying to promote it to farm cattle, chickens, they produce better.
Yes, ma'am.
And you kind of covered the ag area with that statement. Could you speak to that a little bit more, please?
Yes, I was actually at it was the WPS trade show. It's in Oshkosh area last year, farm show. They've done a number of studies. LED lighting dramatically improves milk production. It also dramatically improves egg production from chickens. So there is absolutely a market. I've worked with a couple different companies trying to get my LEDs into certain agricultural businesses within the state of Wisconsin. So that is absolutely an avenue that we are working and trying to partner and help agriculture with the LED lighting.
Currently, who does your lighting go to?
So right now, almost all of our business and how we started was with big box retail. So one of our big customers was Target. Costco is another one of our customers. Burlington stores, if you've shopped at Burlington stores. So most of our business and how we grew and how we got to where we're at was from retail. So it's really in the last year and a half that I've really went more aggressively in the federal contracts is one side of it. And then also in looking at, we're also doing some new development stuff in the city of Madison with a couple developers there. So we're working now, focusing on a little bit more of the local business opportunities. Agriculture was one that we branched into last year and are just starting to try to break ground on that front.
Okay. I have more questions, but I'm not sure they're kosher. Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm fine with.
Is it to Mr. Lawrence or staff or?
No, to Mr. Lawrence. Give me a second to think about it, and maybe I'll just skip it. You said you were looking for property within the city and it was unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include the industrial areas, and it was unsuitable for those areas?
Because they did not fall in the hub zone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That hub zone is kind of the thing that's the
It's
kind of
critical
the tricky,
for you right now.
I have to live on that property. I can't just own or rent a property in a hub zone. I have to live in it. And that's why I needed, when I first started talking to Carrie, I was asking for, hey, do you have a residential, commercial, residential, industrial, is there anything that could be work there? And we were unable to, she was unable to find anything. And so that's when, and ironically, when I started TL Lighting in 2013, we started at my parents' farm in Broadhead, Wisconsin. And I went to the town board there and I got a special use permit to get approval to start our business there. And so that's why my mind went to, as I was looking at the map for the hub zone, that's also why my mind went to, well, it worked before and we had no problem with the community we were in, and it was very successful. So I thought that's kind of what guided me this direction as well.
Thank you.
Quick question for you. Let's assume that your business, you got the special use or conditional use permit and your business took off and grew by tenfold. Would this site still serve that, or would you be coming back for additional permits, or how would that work?
The beauty of the way, let me talk in general about the lighting industry as a whole. So if you think about, we have fluorescent lighting or the PAR lighting that we have here, when you think about how lighting's been done up until LEDs, you have gray bars, you have Viking Electric, you have Warner Electric, you have a huge distribution networks, right? You have huge buildings holding a ton of material, and you have contractors rolling through there every day to pick up, because that fluorescent failed, this fluorescent, or that HID failed, that parking lot light failed. That is going away. That has become a thing of the past. Now, what you're seeing in the market is companies as big as Philips, who is now Signify, Acuity Brands, GE, who sold off and is current. Sylvania sold off their lighting arm to another company, and they're now LED Advance and Osram. They're doing all this. There's a lot of changes. And what nobody wants to hold inventory. Not one company really wants to hold inventory, because it's like a computer. If you remember when you compute, the second you buy your iPhone, it's out of date. There's already a new iPhone that's going to be there in 6 months. That's the way it is with LED lighting. It's because it's electronic technology. So if I were to stock 1 million tubes, all that million tubes, they're going to be 20% more efficient in about 6 months. And they're going to be about 20% less cheaper. So nobody wants to hold stock. So from a traditional lighting perspective, there is absolutely no reason to hold stock. In fact, you are putting yourself in danger to hold stock. And that's why we have so many orders on back order with Signify or Philips right now, is because they don't want to hold stock. So we order, we wait, and so then they wait to get it in from either Mexico or China. So Our business model is a drop ship business model, and that is to where we don't hold a lot of stock. We do not want a lot of inventory. If we're doing our jobs right, we don't hold a lot of inventory. The only time we would ever actually have inventory is if we were to pack a project, and that would be like over a week. So we bring it in the stuff, pack it up, send it out. But we haven't had a project like that in over a year. Everything we've been able to do is package and ship, drop ship. From an install, because we're licensed as an electrical contractor as well. From that model, because we're doing work nationally, and we're doing going to be working with the federal government, most of our jobs are out of state. And so I'm subcontracting electricians and lighting companies in other states. So I don't have to increase my overhead if I'm hiring a new employee, it's going to be to work remotely and maybe manage a project, make phone calls, send emails. I'm not going to add 10 bucket trucks and try to find 10 new electricians to put on the road. So from that perspective, we're set up, and intentionally so, to scale in a manner which we don't need a lot of physical or a lot of overhead to scale. Sorry, it's a long answer for.
Anything else? I guess I have questions perhaps for staff regarding the designation of this zoning, and this might be a little out of scope, but this is A1, but what I'm hearing is maybe it shouldn't be A1, it should be classified something else, perhaps. Is that an assessment that is fair? And let me make it hypothetical. If it wasn't, and if it was a different designation, would these different uses, would we have a different set of special uses? Again, if it's out of scope and you don't feel like you want to answer, I'll withdraw my question.
Jerome would probably answer that.
I'd like to answer it. Thank you for asking it. Town of River Falls, starting in 2015, did a comprehensive rezone of the town. Mm-hmm. And basically, we have two zones in the town, ag residential and exclusive ag, which after 2008 became farmland preservation zoning. And there's some real advantages in farmland preservation zoning. Exclusive ag zoning is gone. You have it in your ordinance. At the time that I worked with redoing the town comprehensive rezone, I worked with the city of River Falls, and this was before these two young ladies were here, and got no interest in rezoning what you call and what your zoning is exclusive ag. It should be farmland preservation. It should meet the new requirements for State Statute 91.01. It does not. So if I could have gone into the ETZ and rezoned this portion, this particular piece of property, it would not be A1. It would not meet our requirements. Give me an overhead again, would you? And I will, I know where it is.
You just said it right up there.
Thanks.
Is this part of the handout? Because
With what I had from, that I printed out. Brandy, while he's doing that, what is the date on our ordinance on the city ordinance.
According to mine.
Amy, can I get sworn in, please?
Absolutely.
It goes back to before 1974.
Could you state your name, please?
Amy Peterson?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth in the matter that comes before us today?
I do.
Thank you.
Jerome is correct. I mean, our exclusive ag district easy ordinance is from the 1970s, 1974. So he's correct in stating that our ordinance is out of date. However, I will point you to the purpose of our ordinance. It is not only, and this is the intent of the exclusive ag district, to preserve ag soils, but it also to control and timely and uneconomical expansion of urban facilities and services. So our ETZ zone was not necessarily to just preserve ag. It was to control the development happening in the area nearest the city so that the city would have room to expand in the future. And it has served the city well over the past 50 years. It is the zoning that we have currently. It is what staff is using, and hence why you have the report before you today.
And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is, without, we're going to go into deliberation here. I feel like some of the testimony here has been a push to say that this isn't the right zoning, but this is the zoning we have, and
Yes.
we're going to have to make a decision
Right.
based on this.
Based on that, that's
But,
correct.
However, if it was something different, there might be a different outcome or whatever with regard to, or decision-making process rather, with regard to special use.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of find the margins of the argument and where we're going with
Okay.
this. So that's why I decided to ask the question and to state that that's kind of where we're going with
Our
that.
criteria for farmland preservation zoning was at least one quarter section at 70% productive farmland, 70%. And then any adjacent parcel would be, by the same owner, would be pulled in if it was 50% or more. That's item 2A. It explains that well. And then we also went into a rather complicated formula called a LISA formula that is land evaluation and site analysis. So my point with the DATCAP was the fact that they are promoting the LISA formula because it allows farmers to put small acreage on less productive soil and get better value for their land. They recognize what was happening in the market. So, thank you for listening.
Yeah, do I have to be sworn in order to speak? I'm Diana Smith, Chair of the Town of River Falls.
You probably shouldn't make statements
Okay,
as a member of the board.
so I can,
I'm sorry. At deliberation time,
okay.
Yeah.
This, all right, I was just going to respond to his comment, but that's fine.
That in deliberation.
All we can do is ask questions, basically.
Yeah, and then one of the, does anybody else have any questions here for staff? Because I have one more at least. With regard to the exclusive ag district ordinance 17.008.150, we have section C, special uses, and I go through that. And then I'm in section E, which we spent a lot of time on in hearing the testimony around that. Does section E supersede section C?
Where are you at?
Oh, he's,
Yeah, mine are
I'm in the-
truly mixed up now. Section E.
In other words, and that's just part of kind of the layman here trying to figure out, trying to make all of these things make sense, because a lot of focus has been put on the E section there, section E, and then we have section C. And I'm trying to square those things. So,
Right.
So we have to look at also what's in section C.
So staff goes through the code when we get a request. Our first process would be to go to section C, special uses, and see if what they're asking for is indeed a special use listed there. Again, this goes back to perspective that this is a new home build, exclusive ag district. Our first answer to Mr. Lawrence when he contacted us was, this is not allowed. The town has taken a different perspective and Mr. Lawrence has as well, that this is a home-based business. I think you heard earlier in staff testimony that this is not a farm-based, home-based business, which is city staff's interpretation of our code.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
So if an existing owner of this parcel came to the city and wanted to build this exact same shed and live in the house, right, and say, put a tack industry in there or something for horses, right, and it lasted for 2 years and then they sold it, whatever, would they have to come back, and they wanted to use it, say, for storage at that point so that they'd get some income out of this building, would that be permitted then? I mean, or would you force them to leave a brand-new building sitting there empty?
Could you state that again? So the owner of the property
so there's
that
an owner of the
lives
property, they're
on the
doing
property?
they're doing ag-related stuff. They decide they want to have, say, a tack business. They want to do sell horse stuff.
Okay.
So they build a brand-new facility. It just doesn't go well. They have this beautiful new building. It's empty now. Then they want to go out and they want to, say, rent it out as storage for boats or something. Would the city then say that that's not permitted and force them to leave that brand-new building open, empty?
Honestly, Mr. Morgan, I think it's something that staff would have to take a look at. I don't have an answer for you tonight.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I guess I'm curious about a new home build. We're not taking a piece of property with no home on it today and developing it, bringing in sewer and electrical and water. We're talking about an established home site where that is abandoned and not livable. And so we're talking about taking that down and putting up a structure that is livable and aesthetic and nice looking. So when I hear new, like when I think new residential or new commercial, I'm thinking exactly that. There was never a building there. Now there's a building there. So when I hear new, we're going to build a new home, that does not resonate with me. I'm not building a new home. I'm demoing an existing building and putting up a nice new building. And I think as I think about the property I've owned over the years, if there's already a building on that property, I'm not adding a third building. There's 2 buildings on it currently. I'm not adding a third. When we're done, there's going to be 2 buildings on it, just like there's 2 buildings on it today. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around how that's a new build. It's not like we're just coming in here, hey, we want to develop this land now. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I just, for me, I don't share that this is a new build. I think this is an improvement on an existing, already been approved building that's just sitting there. So I don't know. Again, there's some letter of the law, spirit of the law things too. At least when I look at the statutes and the zoning, and I understand trying to, like I said, we're not developing, putting in a power plant or a chemical plant or anything like that. The building is a home. And it's going to look just like all the other buildings out there. So we're not putting in a gas station or a laundromat or a restaurant. So we're putting in a building that looks like all the other buildings that are around there. So From my perspective, I feel like we not only meet the letter of the law, but we also meet the spirit of the law, in my opinion. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I kind of do, but geez. just so scary. Can I, just gonna ask, are you married to the metal building and the design? Because you're barely a half mile from our city limits right now. And I think when we talk about the ETZ zone and a new structure, we want it to look a little bit more urban friendly.
So ironically, I wanted the same thing. What I actually, when I first was looking at this property, what I wanted to do is I wanted to demo the greenhouse, and I wanted to put like a cabin, more of a cabin-looking feel, or because it's still 54 acres, So I was looking at log cabins or something like that, a nice A-frame log cabin to put on there. Well, then I found out in talking to Jerome, it doesn't meet setbacks. So if you're going to remodel and increase the property value by I think it was greater than 50%, you have to meet the current setbacks. Well, I can't do that. So I can't use that existing foundation to put a log home on it. So so I want to do a log home and then, have a little, you have the storage building behind it, or a storage building behind it. And it was because of the setbacks and kind of some of the constraints on that existing foundation, because the existing foundation is solid. I just wanted to build on that. So that's when I look at the cost of the property, plus then the cost of the buildings, if I put a new home and then a new building, it starts to become more cost prohibitive. That's why we ended up with the design that we have today. Not my original intent. And I'm open to looking at other ways if we can make it look, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, to make it look, because I don't want it to look like just a steel building either. So the colors and, the stonework and the wainscoting and the things that we're trying to do landscape-wise, to make it where you drive by, you wouldn't even bat an eye, and I don't want it to be an eyesore in any way, shape, or form. So I'm very much open to trying to find a good solution on that front.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so the ETZ ordinance here or at least the zoning has been here for almost 50 years, right? And I understand what the city is doing, trust me. I mean, they're planning for the future, but it's been 50 years. So does the city have a plan to annex this parcel here, or could this sit here for another 50 years with nothing going on?
Well, as you know, the city cannot proactively annex lands outside of the boundary, so we do not have a plan to annex property.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
There's one out in the audience.
If you want to step to the podium and we'll initiate the oath.
John Kaczynski.
John, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter that comes before us today?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. If he buys the property and lives in the house, and he farms the land, and I think farming means you could lease it out to farm or do whatever, couldn't he add a short 800 square foot building and run his business out of that? And if he could, what's the difference? So he buys a property, he is a farmer because he's farming or leasing the land to farm because he's old, and then he wants to operate his business in an 800 foot section. So I'm new to this, but that's what I think he's doing under your codes. I think that would be permitted. So I'll just.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Okay, not seeing any. We are going to close the public hearing and begin discussion and deliberation of the ETZ committee members. And there is coming forth with a decision guide. Let's see, I have that.
Decision guide looks like this.
It's in here.
Hold it up again, Brandy.
Several pages stapled.
Got a few of those here.
It's all white.
I know, it's one of these.
Everybody have that. And then we can just step through this on our own, correct? Or did you want to
I
step
think
through
you
it?
can handle it however you like. So the point of this is to give you an opportunity to ask the questions that are laid out in the ordinance, the standards for special uses, and make a determination and take notes to figure out whether or not the request meets those requirements. And then you can talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. So I'm reviewing this, and I guess it is going to be at our own pace. We're not, or do we want to read these aloud and then answer, just so that we're letting the folks know? I guess I would like to do it that way. Is that
Yeah, however you
acceptable?
want to do it, Mike.
Okay. So the first question is a yes or no, based on the or purpose of the zoning code, municipal code, and exclusive agricultural zoning district. And of course, keep your answers to yourself. You're just gonna write it down. Based on evidence provided, does the special use permit meet the purpose of the zoning code? Question 2, preserving the public interest in securing public safety and welfare. Based on evidence provided, would the special use permit, if approved, harm the public's interest, safety, or welfare? Potential conflict for agricultural use. Based on evidence provided, is there potential for the special use permit to create a conflict with agricultural uses? Need of the proposed use for a location in an agricultural area. Based on evidence provided, is there a need for the proposed special use permit in an agricultural area? Availability of alternate locations. Based on evidence provided, is there an alternative location for the proposed special use permit? Compatibility with existing or permitted uses on adjacent lands. Based on evidence provided, is the proposed special use permit compatible with existing or permitted uses and adjacent land? Productivity of the lands involved. Based on evidence provided, is there potential for the special use permit to reduce the productivity of the lands involved? We're on number 8. I'm just looking ahead here. Okay. Location of the proposed use so as to reduce to a minimum the amount of productive agricultural land converted. Based on evidence provided, can the proposed SUP be located to minimize conversion of productivity agricultural land? Current and future need for public services created by the proposed use. Based on the evidence provided, is there a current or future need for public services by the proposed SUP? Okay. Number 10 of 12 here. Availability of adequate public services and the ability of affected local units of government to provide them without an unreasonable burden. Based on the evidence provided, are adequate public services available? Effect of the proposed use on water and air pollution, soil erosion, and rare or irreplaceable natural resources. Based on the evidence provided, will the proposed SUP have an effect on air, or water, air, soil, or other rare or irreplaceable natural resources? Number 12, compliance with height, area, setback, yard, lot size, parking requirements, and soil requirements as required by all special uses. Based on evidence provided, will the proposed SUP meet all the compliance standards in section 17.108.150, G through J? And now we've got proposed conditions, 4 questions.
I don't think we can go to those
Okay,
yet.
I'm, jumping
That's
ahead a
just
little
my
bit. Yep,
feeling.
yep. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So, I guess we're in a section of the deliberation where we need to have a discussion among ourselves, and if you want to, anybody want to begin with their thoughts?
I'll make a couple of comments.
Sure.
First of all, I think, Governor Walker wants businesses. I mean, in the state, I think this is exactly the type of thing that he wants, right? I mean, open for business is his mantra up there. Secondly, I don't see, pardon?
Not our governor.
Well, not former governor, sorry, former governor. And secondly, another thing I wanted to just notice, I don't see any opposition by any neighbors here at all regarding this proposed business. So if this was going to be a controversial issue, you would have people here opposing it.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to speak on to that or add to that?
I think we love the business. I love the business. I think it's right for our time. I'm just not sure it's the right place, but convince me.
So I haven't looked at these close enough, but did we address C, 17-108-150C 12? And wasn't that what the staff said they looked at first? And we're looking at the E pieces, as far as I can tell. But is not the first thing that we would have to decide is C?
So you're looking at C12 is home occupations and professional offices conducted within and accessory to a single-family dwelling.
Or 13, which is the rural home occupation. So those are the two things. The city staff feels it's 12, and the town report feels it's 13. So I would think that's one of the things we would really have to deliberate and talk about first before we got into whether there were any special use pieces that would be added to it.
I agree in part. However, I would look at C1. Again, it's trying to mesh all of these criteria, where C1 says single-family dwellings or mobile homes exceeding 1 per farm operation for occupancy by a person or family. And this is the phrase, tell me about what you think of this phrase, earning a substantial part of livelihood from the farm operation. And I don't feel that that meets the criteria at this point. I am not been convinced of that clause being met. And if you could, I don't know if anybody wanted to address that.
I'm thinking that the way we looked at it was C has 13 different kinds of pieces that affect it. And this C1 is just one part. 12 and 13 are another part. 12 and 13 do not depend on one. And then the other thing I think is really important for us to discuss and agree on is the part that Dan just brought up. There is a dwelling on that parcel right now. He is not asking to build a new dwelling. He could ask to replace that building with another building. But what he would have to do, and that's why Jerome made the recommendation he did, is the existing building does not meet the setbacks from the state highway as they are now. He has to move whatever he would build back farther in order to meet the setbacks from the highway. But I would think that since there is an existing dwelling on that piece of property, another dwelling would be allowed, irregardless of whether it took part of its income from the farm or not.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm struggling with reconciling that. Because it also comes up again in D. Yeah, give me a moment to read that. If someone else has any comments they would like to make, I want to reread section D.
Well, as I sat down and went through this last night and again today, I came up with basically the same conclusions that staff did on items 1 and 2. And when I got to 12, that's when I got a little hung up. But I worked through that a little bit more today, and I kind of came up with the same conclusion. It's an existing home where you can have some sort of a occupation in there if the substantial part of your income is from the farm. And I feel how I look at this is I have to look at what the ordinance says, and the current ordinance and the current zoning. I can't wish it was something else. So that's how I look at number 1, based on the evidence provided. Does the SUP meet the purpose of the zoning code? I don't think it meets 1 or 12.
Mm-hmm. So I know the township has struggled with this in the past. Define substantial for me.
Well,
you're going to go to their taxes and look at it? I mean, we've had these discussions before. I mean, I think that is renting out 15 acres of the property, does that qualify? Most farmers now are working 2 and 3 jobs, right, to do it. I mean, the reality is, I think, and you either have to read this as the letter of the law, right, or recognize it was written 50 years ago at an entirely different time, and try to make some adjustments to this moving forward. But just the word substantial, I don't even know what that means.
Well, I believe substantial would probably be, well,
maybe if you're growing pot, you could do
we're
it.
looking at 50%. I mean, I guess I would say substantial would be 50% or more.
Okay, so the total size of this parcel is what, Jerome?
54 acres.
54. Nobody's going to make a living on 54 acres of land. It's just never going to happen.
I agree with that, and then that, but you go with the documentation that you have and what was passed, and that if it's not for this body to decide, but if these are issues that we're struggling with, then the law should be changed, and that's outside the scope of this. It's kind of what I was getting to before. I'm, as a, jurist, if you will, here, or a decision maker, I'm only going to be able to use the framework of the law, and if it's not very effective, that's part of the problem, but I still have to use that recommendation because that's what was passed, and I think this might require review, but that's, again, outside the scope. So if we allow flexibilities like that, then we're setting precedents, and we could end up with those same arguments even further in another direction. So it's for me, and it's up to each individual person making a decision. So that's kind of the framework in which I'm using to look at that, and that's where I get hung up is those, and you're right, define substantial. But it is in the ordinance, and in the spirit of that, I feel like it has to have more of an agriculture. You brought up an example of someone operating with equine and a tack shop or something like that, then I would probably go in that direction. It's related to agriculture.
But my point is that if somebody wanted to get around the ordinance and they were kind of slippery, that's all they'd have to do. They could come forward, they could ask for the permit, they're gonna open a tack shop, right? And then a year later, they could say, my business isn't working, and then they could come back and they could ask for a different business. Now, then you would have to have the choice of say, okay, I guess that's not gonna make it. You just spent $300,000 on a building, you're gonna leave it sit there. So that was kind of what my point was, and typically governing bodies aren't gonna do that. I mean, it just looks pretty bad to do something like that. But that's happened 100 times, people trying to get around these very restrictive ordinances like this, right?
Right. I think, yeah, and the scenario there is another special use process would have to be implemented, and
yeah, so meet it up front.
So, right.
I also would like to just go on record to say that in December, before any of this was a part of anything, I did meet, Jerome and I met with city staff, and I did ask them to call the ETZ committee together so we could look at the inconsistencies in an ordinance that was over 50 years old, so that we could be operating in the 20th century, and then some of these issues would be different because we would have made adjustments to what is currently available, and I was told no. And that's just a statement. We can't do anything.
Right.
Although I still feel that this committee should have had a chance to have some say before now in how the committee operates.
Do we have any other statements?
I have one question on this zone, this hub zone. I probably should have asked this before, earlier, but I should have probably asked earlier about the HUD zone. Hub zone. How far it reaches out, and if there's other cities that have these hub zones, other areas, or if it's something unique to the east side of River Falls.
We're in a closed session, so we can't really.
Can't ask the question.
We can't ask the question of staff, so we're in the
Oh, we
deliberation.
can't,
So-
huh?
Right. Correct, that's the way I understand it, so.
Oh,
So that,
So we aren't asking a question.
not asking a question, but it's, the answer is in the air. So
I can't.
Okay. What I would like to do is just take 1 minute, and I would like to go through this worksheet for myself and just, and I'd like the members, if you want to do that, but I would just like to take a pause for just 1 minute. I just want to check something. If you have some comments, you go right ahead.
Okay, when we're talking about following the exact letter of the law and the exact pieces that our ETZ zoning ordinance says, I would like to direct you to, and I don't know if this is 150, under standards for special uses, E, and I don't know if that's 150 or beyond that, but it says, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection shall be notified of the approval of any special uses in the exclusive ag district. A recommendation shall be forwarded to the City Council for action without revisions. In reviewing applications for special uses, the Extraterritorial Zoning Committee and the City Council shall consider the following criteria. So if we were going exactly by the letter of our current ETZ, we would not be following the procedure that we are tonight.
I believe we're using documentation that has yet to be updated on a recent change in the law. And so I don't know what that has been, I believe, deprecated. So because of the state statute. And so your question, I understand your question, so then what parts are valid? And
What parts are valid? If
not.
right.
However, it is still a guidance that I think would probably still be valid, some of the sections here. So that's,
I understand that Act 67 changed how we can hold public hearings and the kinds of things that we can do and we cannot do, but I really do have a concern over being able to pick and choose which pieces we think are important and which are not.
any other comments?
I do believe we have flexibility as a government body. I mean, many of us have been picked up for speeding and given a warning, right? And if they're going to follow the law, you're going to get a ticket. I mean, there's flexibility out there, and I think it's our obligation to do what's best for the business, quite bluntly, and for everybody else.
Okay.
Moving forward.
Yep. All right, so what we have before us, if we don't have any more comments, I would like to move to the next step. And we're going to be, I'm going to state for the record what each voting option means. The committee may consider the following options. Number 1, approve the special use permit. This requires a majority vote, 4+ members in favor. Number 2, approve the special use permit with conditions. The ETZ committee may impose conditions as recommended by staff or create new conditions that are based on substantial evidence and measurable. Number 3, deny the special use permit. The committee may deny the request. It is an automatic denial if there are fewer than 4 yes votes. So those are the 3 options. There is the conditions that I don't think they're entirely exclusive to the staff. They are staff recommendations. And can we see those again, please?
They're right here.
Oh,
The page before the motion.
that's right. Okay, thank you. So,
Just to be clear, these are the city staff's options, right?
Correct.
Did Jerome, can I ask him a question because he's our zoning administrator?
this is
No.
we were part of the
Not anymore?
deliberation,
Okay.
so that would, I'd have to open back up to public.
Okay.
You'd have to
So,
go by his report and our town recommendation.
so with that stated, because of the flurry of documents here and what we have from Jerome, I'm trying to, if a member of the committee here could point me to, were there conditions that would be in this document?
Voted with
If
condition?
we can add conditions.
Let's review the proposed conditions
Okay,
and,
By staff, remember.
By
City
staff.
staff.
right, but
Not
city,
town.
right, and
right.
that's what I was getting at in order to
And-
bring this together in case we had,
This piece here would be
right,
in Jerome's report.
okay.
It's on the front page, bottom of the front page.
Where it says the motion to approve.
Okay, but he's going through these proposed conditions.
I understand, but those are by the city.
Those
These
are-
are the ones by us.
Right, that's what I was.
Right. Okay, I'm going to follow up on Susan's request, and we have, I don't know that we need to, the city has come forth with those. City staff has come forth with those in their presentation. I don't know that I need to read these aloud.
No.
So if you want to go through the worksheet, this may take a minute. So, or a couple minutes, and go through and read those and answer the yes/no questions.
What is the height on the ETZ? The height requirement?
Here.
I believe the building met all of, because they went and got all the,
Residence is 25 feet.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. What about the other buildings? Does it say? Because a residence could be 2 stories, but
Could. And,
utility shed, does it say?
maximum height, residence 25 feet, other restrictions twice the, but the maximum height isn't over 25, right?
No, it's not 25.
So it doesn't make any
It
difference.
doesn't make any difference.
there is no,
Yeah.
no, there is no maximum on the other.
I feel like we're in a situation where we have 3 options.
Yeah.
Is anybody considering options with conditions?
Yeah, yes.
Such as, yeah, I would be more than willing to consider options.
Yeah.
Conditional use with options, I certainly would.
Okay. I guess at this point, then, what I would like to do is hear what those conditions are.
So I'm not sure how this works.
Yeah,
Do we,
that's what
do we
I'm-
make a motion to conditionally approve and then, I think that's how we've typically done it, is that we make the motion and then vote on the motion? Or do you have to get all the conditional, or the conditions in there and talked about before you actually make the motion for that?
I'd like to discuss the conditions first.
Okay.
And section F in here lists the conditions that we could possibly set on. So if we wanted to look at that, it says conditions which may be attached to special uses. Upon review of subsection E, which is part of this, is what we've been doing. The following conditions may be attached to the granting of a special use: increased setbacks in yards, specification of water supply, liquid waste, solid waste disposal, landscaping and planting screens, surety, operation controls and time of operation, air pollution, erosion, reclamation measures, special inspections, additional fees to offset public costs, location of use. So, those are a few of the things that we could do. In the Peterson special use permit that we granted a year and a half or so ago, we added conditions on time of operation, on lighting, on noise, on monitoring and testing. I mean, so we added some really significant restrictions to that operation because, it needed to be done. I am not sure the scope of this occupation that will be contained mostly in the home and done by phone would have any of those same ones, but we certainly could impose some of those. I mean, if they're going to be bringing in trucks, they might have to be brought in between, I think Peterson's got the hours of 6 a.m. to whatever.
I think from my standpoint, it's, what do we have that we know of in the documentation about allowing for a certain time for the special use permit to expire?
Well, that's up to us.
Yeah.
That is up to
So that
us.
is part of this.
Correct. The only thing, I did not look in Act 67 to find out. In a normal conditional use permit, the conditional use goes with the land, not with the business and not with the owner. I don't know if Act 67 changed that. That's not in any of the things that anybody has pulled out before. So my feeling is, and we didn't operate correctly that way for a long time. We put the conditional use on the person or the business. And then when we were studying and did some training in conditional uses, we found that the conditional use goes with the land. So I'm not sure.
But we could make that condition. We could make it.
I am not sure we can,
Yeah,
but legally, but I think that we might choose to do that, and then if somebody wanted to challenge it, they could do so. Because we have done that in the past. We've said, you know, you want to operate this business, but if you should sell it, then the next person coming in has to come in and reapply.
So what I'm looking for is some conditions.
What are you thinking?
I'm just for the motion, if that's what we're going to do, because we have three options.
Right.
We could go right to the motion to approve up and down. We could, if we want, we can do a conditional approval and vote on that, or we can go to a motion to deny.
So the most important thing would be to do this reasonable and to the extent practical measurable. On any condition that we should think about, it has to meet that, because Act 67 says that.
Yes.
And then I also think it's important to note Act 67 says where an applicant meets or agrees to meet all the requirements and specific and conditions specified, then the governing body is required to grant that conditional use permit.
Could we, on what our staff has proposed as number 1,
Maintain the current zoning?
well, we have to go with that for us. We have to maintain the
Right.
current zoning, but I would say until such time that the city sees fit to change it, as opposed to annexed into the city, because that ETZ is going to be there for a long time, and as you said, we don't know when it comes into the city. But
So Susan, you're saying that instead of until it is annexed, that you're saying until such time that the city changes the ruling on the designation of that land is that what you're saying?
until the city changes that zoning.
That zoning designation.
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, if we were to look at it as an ETZ committee and make recommendations that that land should be A2 instead of A1, or just A, or, you know, ours is either farmland preservation or farmland preservation or ag-res. Those are our two designations, and the cities is A1 and A2.
That's where we're running into a problem. But I really feel that I don't want to set a precedent that everybody else can take advantage of.
Correct.
I want it to be treated as one item, and the next one has to do the same thing.
Correct.
Can't just say, well, past precedent, okay, precedent.
So I had one other thing that popped into my head. In an agricultural ETZ zoning, you know, we have a IO chiropractic is just down the road from this. You know, how would that fit in if somebody came in and asked us that? You know what I mean? So yeah, but I agree with you. I don't think we want to do a broad spectrum that says anybody in this ETZ zoning can do whatever they want if they come before this committee. I think you're correct.
Well, the conditions on here, I mean, what you couldn't have happen, though, is to have them get the building up, start the business, and then have the city turn around and zone it and exclude the business.
Well, they wouldn't do that.
Well, I'm just saying.
I don't think so.
I think they would want that in writing somehow.
Well, once,
Because it could theoretically happen, right? I mean, whatever zoning they decided to put out there, if they annexed it, I mean, they could.
well, once they annex, it isn't anything we get to say anything about, but,
That's,
And again, annexation is.
Is
a whole other issue.
It's initiated
by the landowners.
but whatever, I'm just saying the zoning on here, you know, I mean, I agree 100%, you know, I mean, you want to make sure that we're doing this right, so that it's fair to the city, that you're not going to just let everybody in, but we have to also make sure that it doesn't change for them while they're running their business.
After the fact.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Or
So
during the fact.
So Susan, do I hear you saying maintain the current zoning and use of land in ag and forest use? I mean, this is if we approve the CUP, until such time that the city changes the ETZ land use ruling or it is annexed into the city?
Yes. What do you think of that?
I think it sets a precedence.
Okay. I'm saying that, but
I know.
I,
But if we don't make the changes, if we don't start trying to bring this into the 20th century, it's never going, I mean, unless this committee gets us going, but we have to decide what we're going to do, whether we vote to grant or deny, or we vote to grant with some special conditions such as this.
is there a limit on this special use permit?
I mean,
Automatic one? or-
Again,
no, as far as term, time span, or is that?
Yeah, because is that what you're talking
We
about?
can do that.
we can do that.
That's
We
not
can,
an issue.
It's true, yeah.
and generally what that means, and how we've handled it in the town is, we could ask them to come in annually for a conditional use, a review. We could take into consideration any complaints or something that, and we could review even sooner. But as I've seen the county act and as the town has acted, so insofar, and I'm not sure about the city, but once you grant a conditional use, it's in effect until such time as the body itself would decide it wasn't valid anymore.
It has to be under the condition related to the purpose of the ordinance and based on substantial evidence. I don't know how that does anything. You know, I would want, when I'm looking at, and the hang-up for me, as I've stated before, is substantial livelihood, is farming, and those kind of things. I'm trying to find a proposed condition that addresses that. I'm not, you know, a duration would mean that we would be asking for some, you know, it gives the homeowner an opportunity to have some kind of, you know, change in compliance or waiting for the zoning to change maybe. I don't know what the duration does for us. Like, excuse me.
Well, doesn't that imply that you're putting a time limit on their permit?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. We don't want to do that, I'm saying, but isn't that what that's addressing?
That's what I'm saying. What are we getting out of, what does that, does it?
No, I don't, I think what Diana was getting at, you typically don't do that unless there's complaints, because you could put that in there, right? If there's too much traffic or, you know, lights or whatever, right? You can put anything you want in here, and then you can review it. But you wouldn't typically say you're going to get this for 2 years, and then we're going to review it, because nobody invests that way.
They won't invest then.
You
It
know.
wouldn't make sense.
So if we look at the conditions that are suggested by just the city, I know you have yours from the township. Requiring the building to be sited so it's not located on prime agricultural soil. I see that that's debatable in what we're looking at here is what that means. So I would say that that's not even a condition we want to add, because that could be,
No.
that's hard to define.
Well, except that we would go by the map that Jerome put up, that shows what's farmland preservation and what isn't, according to USDA.
Okay, but wasn't that,
He put that up on, yeah.
wasn't it, I thought the prime was the green, and this isn't on the green,
Right.
but I could be.
And that's what you would want it not on.
So you
Well,
don't,
like 0.1
Right.
and they're not
acres or
planning to put
something.
it on there.
They're not
so-
planning to put it on a
so
green,
that's-
no.
That one doesn't, I think we can exclude number 3 from the staff recommendation because of that. And
I believe the driveway would have been routed over that.
Yeah, I think it was like
Area.
0.1 acres.
A tenth of an acre would have to, with having to move it vertical.
I mean, what?
Yeah.
If you want to put it in there, you just say minimize.
Minimize, yeah, we could say minimizes the effect on productive farmland. And again, even though this isn't in your part, it wouldn't be considered productive farmland in the town. If we're looking and if we're going down, preserving public interest and securing public safety and welfare, I don't think that has anything to do with this either, do you? The second, number 2?
No. I would definitely have 4, though.
Yes, 4 is a factor.
Going back to 2, is it my understanding that the special use permit goes with the property?
That's what were trained in when we did conditional use training a few years back.
and put a
special.
condition on there.
Yeah, but then, seems like Mr. Lawrence and the group are trying to do this right, but who's to say that they're going to not sell this in a year or so, and it would be somebody else there, and then the special use permit goes along with the land.
But then I think it would be required that they would apply for it, reapply, and
I'm not sure.
But here's how I would say it, Susan. We're granting this special use for TL lighting and a rural home occupation in a dwelling, okay? If someone else were to buy that, they wouldn't necessarily, well, they'd have to buy the business, and it would have to remain exactly the same as it was. If they wanted to buy that, if they wanted to sell that building to someone else for another purpose, then I think we could add that condition saying, then they'd have to come back. It wouldn't just be automatically granted that they could continue using that building.
So we limit it to that single.
To that single business.
Owner and business.
Yeah.
Owner and business.
Owner and business?
I thought you said we couldn't do that.
I said Act 67 doesn't address that.
Oh.
I did. I mean, I looked. I checked what was in here, and I don't see it. It was in old stuff, but I don't see it in Act 67.
all right, so just to kind of get a barometer of what we're doing here, looks like we are moving in a direction of trying to make a motion based on conditions. Where are we with which conditions? I'd like to be able to
Okay.
get that kind of listed right now.
And are you looking at the city conditions or the town conditions?
The ones proposed by our staff.
Any
The ones
conditions-
proposed by
Any
our
conditions?
staff.
It comes from anywhere.
Anybody on the board?
Number 1, we said yes, maintain the current zoning, and Diana
With the
has-
changes
with
that
the-
Susan recommended.
Yep.
Okay,
That the city changes, until such time that the city changes the ETZ land use ruling or it is annexed into the city.
okay, so we got that one. So what we're doing is we're building a motion and with conditions. And so what did we say with number 2?
Well, that's what we were just debating.
I mean, yeah, so we haven't, that hasn't really been.
No, we're trying to figure that out.
Oh, are we, okay, you're at
So
number
We're
2?
looking at number 2 here, trying to figure out,
Limit the duration of the special use?
yeah, how to word that.
And after we get through these, then let's
Go back,
talk about
okay.
that and, okay. You're-
It's limited to the current owner and
Yeah.
business. limited to that owner and business.
I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I would agree that that would be acceptable.
Okay.
And so it says, in other words, when the property is sold, the permit is no longer valid.
Correct.
Okay. Such limitation would be recorded against the property.
I guess I'd like to try to word that a little bit more flexibly, if we could, because, so you start a business and you run it for 10 years, you've got all that investment in it, and, you know, then you can sell the land and the buildings, but the business can't realistically be
Well, in
sold.
10 years, they might have to come here again.
Well, but, and that would be great, if we could put that in here somehow, so that any new owner
Would
can
have to reapply.
for the special use permit or something, then I think that would
Well,
be.
So what I think we can do then is, if you would like to craft words, we can
Find
make
something.
we can,
we haven't formed a motion yet, so we can
Yeah.
make changes.
Yeah, we're still on our conditions.
yes, right.
So what
Right,
you
but-
want, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, and my husband yells at me all the time. So we would say, in other words, when the property is sold, the permit is no longer valid, but any new owner could, of the business, could come back before this committee.
Right, that's what you want to be able to do.
What I would like to do is
Mm-hmm.
formalize that language in the form of a motion that would be attached to the motion to conditionally approve. So, in order to do that, I would like to entertain a
When the property
motion
is sold,
to change the language of that condition.
original.
I don't
Well,
think it's
we
at a
don't
motion
have-
point. We aren't, we don't have to
No,
do
but
that
I mean,
yet.
in order to, or we have to do it at some.
When we
some
finish
time.
up the motion, but we're just doing
Okay,
what
so
the
we're-
conditions might
I see
be.
what you're saying.
The motion and all the
all the
conditions at the
conditions.
same time.
Yeah.
We're gonna bundle it.
Yeah, bundle. Bundle's
Okay.
much easier in my mind.
All right.
So here what you're saying is, any new owner of the property and business
Okay.
would have to come, would have to apply for a new,
Reapply for the.
must have to reapply for a special use permit. I mean, keep going if that's not the wording that you want.
In other words,
Buyer of the business.
Property
when it's
sold, the
sold,
property
has to
is
come and
no
reapply for
longer-
a special use permit then,
Yeah.
right?
In other words,
you
when the
know,
property is sold,
you know
the
how
new
this
owner-
reads right now?
okay,
Limit the duration of the special use permit or limit the ability to transfer or renew the permit. In other words, when the property is sold, the permit is no longer valid. Such limitation would be recorded against the property. So, pretty much that.
So you,
so you don't think that if the property were sold and the business intact, that somebody could come back and ask? I mean, that's what we're asking, is that there is a chance, if they wanted to sell the property and the business together, that the new owner could come back and reapply for the same kind of special use permit?
I think that's what this states.
You think it states that?
I don't know. So I would maybe write, if you just get rid of that first sentence, I'm just saying, and then just say when or if the property is sold, the original permit is no longer valid, and the new owner must reapply for this, a renewal of the special use permit.
And include that, such limitation would be recorded against the property.
Yeah.
That sounds okay.
we're basically dropping that first
Yeah.
sentence. We're just using the in other words, so.
Well, to keep the
I'm
in
getting
other
rid of
words
that.
out.
Yep.
Do the when the
I've got it
property is
written down
sold,
here, I
yeah.
think.
All right. And number, are we, feel good about that one?
Can property be transferred without being sold? I mean,
Oh, come on now, you're asking. I don't think any of us are lawyers, are we?
Yeah,
What do you
as far as
think?
like, you mean transferring to a
Yeah,
family
yeah,
member.
too.
getting around it by
Yeah, here.
transferring it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could go to an heir.
Heir.
to a
Oh,
kid,
yeah,
to-
yeah.
With no money under the table.
upset.
Property is sold or transferred. I don't know, we could put that language in there.
Yeah, we could
Yep.
put that in there. Or transferred. Although I'm not, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, because I would think that, you know, if I wanted to give my business to my son, and however I chose to do that, you would think you would want them to be able to continue the business that you started. I would think that still would meet family or owner, yeah, I would take that out.
So, because you're looking at an unrelated party.
Unrelated party.
Okay, transferred to an unrelated party then.
Well, we got original. Oh, good question. Any new owner of the business is how I put it, but we didn't go that way.
I don't know why you wouldn't have any, I mean, even if you gave it to a kid, I'd still have them come back for a new permit. I mean, it's a whole new generation. You don't know
I
what
think
they-
maybe,
Sold or transferred.
exactly.
They have to come back.
That's okay.
I don't think you can let any of them out, you know what I mean? You can't just transfer it and not have to come for a permit. Anyway, if it's transferred or if it's sold.
Okay,
covers
sold
everybody
or
then.
transferred.
Yeah.
Sold or transferred. Okay?
All right, then we've got,
3, which we decided was moot, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, it depends on whether you look at that driveway, right?
but it's that 1/10 of it.
I know. So-
It's not even.
You could fix it by just saying minimize, require that the building site minimize any impact on potential prime ag land or something.
Okay,
And it's done.
So require that the building to be sited so that
It
it minimizes.
minimizes its impact on, I guess they're calling it prime agricultural soils.
Okay?
Seems we're moving towards a motion to conditionally approve, and I don't know that have we ever answered the question whether,
Well, that was what I originally asked, is do we
Yeah.
start with a motion on one of these and then do these? Have the vote on that? Or do we go through all these potential conditions and then not even approve the condition? That's what I was trying to get at a long time ago.
So you're saying we should,
No, I think we have to know the conditions, Brad. I think we have to know the conditions we might put on before we vote to approve or deny. I mean, if we deny, there's nothing, that you don't have to go any farther. Why? Then any of this is moot. So we have to go through and look at what kinds of conditions we might approve
Right.
before we would.
so when the motion is made, it's
All these
going to be a
conditions.
fantastic speech.
parliamentarian.
The chair.
That's right.
They're a parliamentarian.
All right, so you want all of this in one motion?
Are we
And it'll be
following
the-
Robert's Rules of Order, or don't we have to?
Well, of course we have to.
Yes,
but-
yes.
But we're having discussion
We're
ahead of
okay.
time. I think we are. We're having deliberation, which we're allowed to have.
All right.
So at 3, we've got require the building to be sited so that it minimizes the impact on prime agricultural soils.
Yeah.
Okay? And then number 4, require that all other ETZ ordinance requirements are met, including building height and setbacks. That's a no-brainer. I mean, I think we would certainly do that.
Yeah. So we'll-
And I'd add a 5th condition, and that is that it's landscaped to minimize, or to, somebody help with the wording, but
We have
as
it-
he explained it, but
We
I
would
think
do
we
it.
need it in writing.
I'm looking to see what it says in here.
Yeah, it was on here, landscaping and planting screens is all it really says.
Landscaping and planting screens to minimize,
Visual
to make it
impact
aesthetically pleasing. How's that?
from the road.
From the road.
What's the language in that one?
Orders will be required,
I'm working on it.
yeah.
Okay, you can work on it. and
No, I
give it
will
to
too.
us.
Will be required
Still voting.
to,
So, first and foremost, we're not setting a precedent. For future development in the ETZ zone.
I think we're,
Might be.
this is something that could be
Yeah. That
Two as-
meets,
precedent or an example of something that somebody else might
that
want to do.
meets,
Yeah,
Just submit a landscape plan to the
yeah.
ETZ.
it's a large area.
That'll fix that. So we got some wording for that last one then? So I think we can just say owners will be required to submit a landscape plan to the ETZ committee for approval.
How about to city staff?
Oh, maybe we have different ideas.
That's why we want city staff to approve it, okay?
Well,
this is
well,
an
no,
ETZ.
yeah, I think that it should, the town has a pretty specific landscaping plan in all of our conditional uses that we ask, and it would do exactly what you're asking. Minimize the effect on, from the road and the neighbor visibility and dark sky lighting, so it doesn't go up. I mean, all those would be part of what we would require.
Okay, I have another concern. I said that I drove over to the development north of this property because this is in their view shed. You didn't know that? Or you don't care?
I'm thinking what's one house to another house, but that's just
No,
my
it's not
opinion.
it's not,
But
you
it
know,
is-
this isn't a house.
It is going to be a house with the addition of the 800 square feet for storage.
Okay,
So-
now you're talking semantics and I'm talking view.
Well, and that's probably because we have a number of houses in this type of building in the town. So it's, to us, it is a house.
So it's common in a rural area,
That
but
could be.
not in a residential. And I'll point out that straight north, you're in the city of River Falls. In fact, the city of River Falls, if you head north, extends even east of this area.
Correct.
And we do have an obligation to take that into consideration. You know, maybe we can't say when this is going to be annexed, and we can't determine what a builder's going to do on a property. But I'm not sure what, you know,
So Susan, what would meet it?
might be a hill behind it and another house behind it, and maybe it's not an issue.
But what were you getting at? Were you thinking of lighting? I guess I was trying to, where were you
See,
going?
lighting has been one of our big issues.
One of the issues I'm having with this entire discussion is the fact that we're micromanaging a property, and we're going to be,
And we
we're
don't
going to be
have
doing this
that.
every time, and so I don't want to be starting this, down this road. And that's, and in my mind, that points to the fact that we have to do this, is pointing to, you know, keeping, why we keep the zones and the way they are. But I think what we have for these conditional use from the city, the recommendations,
Yeah.
and then what we have coming from the town, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into all the landscaping part of it at this point, but,
Yes, we do.
okay.
So could, Susan, I mean, I understand, you know, you want city staff to look at it, but could we say that they have to present a landscaping plan for approval from both the city and the town? Because we
Yes.
may have more restrictive ones than you even do.
Yes.
But that makes sense, because
Yes.
I don't see us as not expecting them to come back with a landscaping plan, because we make everybody come back with a landscaping plan.
Okay. I agree with that. But I'd rather the staff, it's their business, and they aren't pulling the ETZ in to, make these decisions.
Okay. So what, here's how I would envision what could happen and how we could put it in or not. We would require him to come to the town plan commission and then board with a landscaping plan that would meet our requirements. And then we could make that a recommendation to the city staff, and they could look at it and come back with recommendations if they didn't feel it met what the city would meet city plans. That we could work together on creating a landscaping plan that would be acceptable to both.
I
No.
think that one of the issues that you're running into with that is you're requiring a property owner to meet the conditions of two masters, and then there's the ETZ, and I don't, I think that's kind of an issue. I mean.
What would you do, leave it out totally?
I would leave it out.
So, then would would 4 meet it, do you think then? Require that all other ETZ ordinance requirements are met, including building height and setbacks and landscaping? I mean, could we put something in there, just do an addend, just add that to it?
Though I don't know what the landscaping requirements are in the ETZ.
I don't know if there are any, it just says that we can put some on.
But it could be an empty vessel, put it in there. I guess that would be the way we could do that.
Here's the other thing. Yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but we need now.
What?
The landscaping goes in within,
We do require it to go in within a certain period of time.
Based on weather.
Yeah, based on weather. We did that with lighting too. I mean, we did make one of our buildings in light industrial change all their lighting out. Well, we made 2 buildings change all their lighting out because it did offend the neighbors on the hill.
okay,
Diana,
so,
would you have a problem if they just submitted this to the city and sent a copy to us as a courtesy? And if we had a problem, we could send over comments? I mean, otherwise, it should go to the ETZ. I mean, it's in the ETZ, right? I mean, but otherwise, I agree with Mike. I mean, you don't want these people to go to multiple meetings, and it just, it gets out of control, right?
Yeah.
And so I would have no problem with the city, but we'd like to see it, is all, so that if we wanted to submit any concerns or recommendations, we could.
and I don't care who goes to first.
Yeah. So,
I just think for approval from the township and the city.
Is there anything else?
so we can decide on that, Mike.
Because it's being written right now, it looks like.
Yep. Okay, so what I did is exactly what I said. The owners will be required to submit a landscaping plan for approval of both the city and the town. And it doesn't matter who it goes to first, just both have to approve. That would be 5.
For approval. Put that, not just submit it, but
I got
for
for approval. Oh, I do have for approval. For approval of both the city and the town. Okay?
Any additional
Conditions?
conditions?
Well, like I said, the dark sky lighting is one that we think is really important. And I think it would be important to those neighbors to the north and east.
I do too.
But isn't that already under?
And no, it's not in the ETZ anywhere. It's in ours, but it's not in the ETZ.
Okay, put that one in there.
Dark sky lighting, that'd be 6.
Well, you could put that in 5 and just say, submit a landscape plan that includes dark skylight.
And you're really moving lighting into dark sky. And for a company that does lighting as a business, okay.
Yeah, they want to advertise out there.
Okay. Okay.
Any other conditions.
So we're going to assume that they observe normal hours of operation for a business. And if they bring in any trucks, they're only going to bring them in during the day, not in the middle of the night.
Stated in the testimony, yes.
Yes. So we don't need to go there. Okay. The other thing that is in some of ours is that it's some of our conditional use permits is that it is limited to the owners of the business and less than 2 employees. I don't know if we want to think about that.
I don't know either.
I mean, it doesn't sound like that's going to be the piece here, but what if they do grow enough to need more?
And I think, again,
How about,
the statements were made, and so it's in good faith.
Mhm.
I don't know that we need to codify it.
Okay.
I'm thinking for the motion, I don't know, I think we could kind of get in danger of enumerating a lot of things, and so I don't know if we want to go in that direction.
so maybe
we
it's
could-
simply said any changes in their current business plan has to come back before the committee for review? Or do we want to just take
Is
it
it
in good
assumed
faith?
that they can't expand the size of that building?
Yes, it is.
Assumed, huh?
No, I think we're granting this building size. If they want to make any changes to that building, they would have to come back before us.
We're in front of the
Yeah.
ETZ
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
So what is the motion?
So, you have it?
I'll make the motion.
Brad's
to
got it,
conditionally
okay.
approve, but then you're going to read all the conditions.
Read all of it.
Well, okay, so
But
what I do need is what I would like, if I could, is one person to read the, motion. So basically, I'll kind of set you up here.
Wait a minute, it's chair.
It could be something like, just start with letter B, motion to approve, bear with me a second here.
B is conditionally approved. Motion is to approve with these conditions, or?
Yes.
B could be motion to approve with these, with the following conditions?
Approve the special use permit.
Yes, you have to say the whole,
Following conditions.
And then list them.
Be sure to ask if there's any more discussion before that vote.
Absolutely.
I will.
Well, I think we're just, all of us trying to put together what it says, Susan, so help him out.
Looking for.
So proposed conditions is where they've got the piece there, and that's where we added things too. So should we start with that? Right here, proposed conditions?
Yes, but I'm trying to find,
You're trying to find the motion.
I'm trying to find approval of the subject, which is.
Which the subject
With the
is?
technical,
Special use permit. and exclusive
or
use
is it
For.
what's the designation of
Oh,
that?
if, I'd have to find it.
To approve a special use permit.
You're right, there are too many pieces of paper.
I don't know if that's what you're looking for. It's
There.
not a succinct statement.
Motion to approve the conditional use permit for Ken Terahira and TL LLC based on the following conditions?
Yes, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Which one was that, Ann? Oh, Jones.
Okay, hand it back, so.
Oh, you want?
Okay.
It was, though.
So if you were to make that statement,
And Dan Lawrence. I
Condition or
think.
special?
Well, Dan Lawrence is just the spokesperson for him.
Okay.
Dan, is that how you read it, or do you want it to be for both of you?
no.
And I have to ask him that, because we have to know how to say this. Don't you think?
Yes.
We can't make addresses to the audience. We have to do it just based on that.
Okay, it says applicant,
Where is it?
right here.
On the city piece.
Right here.
Okay, Dan
One
Lawrence.
with the blue picture.
The planning and zoning application is in your packet.
Say again?
Yeah, it's in here, but we got so many packets around now that we're all mixed
So the
up.
applicant's name is Kenichiro Terra.
Yeah, Terahira.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so based on, you're gonna,
I'm just going to say a motion to approve the special use permit for Ken Terahira. And they've got TL Lighting on here. Do we want to add that in there as the business?
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
And TL Lighting LLC. So motion to approve the special use permit for Ken Terahira and TL Lighting LLC based on the following conditions. And those are the ones over here, correct?
yes.
Okay, the condition number 1 is that they maintain the current zoning and use of the land in agricultural forest use until such time that the city changes the land use designation in ETZ or changes the ETZ land use ruling, or it is annexed into the city of River Falls. So I'll read it again. Maintain the current zoning and use of land in agricultural foral use until such time that the city changes the ETZ land use ruling or it is annexed into the city of River Falls. Okay. 2, when the property is sold or transferred, the original permit is no longer valid, and the new owner must reapply for a special use permit. Such limitations would be recorded against the property. 3, require the building to be sited so that it minimizes the impact on prime agricultural soils. 4, requires that all other ETZ ordinance requirements are met, including building height and setbacks. 5, the owners are required to submit a landscape plan for approval of both the city and the town, including dark sky lighting.
That is the motion. Do I hear a second?
A question first. Oh, never mind, never mind.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Susan?
On the last one, it's the installation that I'm,
Installation of dark sky lighting?
no, they have to submit a plan, but there has to be within a time.
Oh, you want a time frame?
Otherwise, they haven't planned, and 10 years down the road, they haven't planted the trees yet.
You're correct. We need to set a time frame on it.
So I would like to see a motion to amend the conditions of the motion.
And what kind of time frame are you thinking, Susan?
What do you guys usually do do you have a time frame?
About 3 months when we first started
Yeah.
it, I think.
I think completion, don't we look at completion
Within 3
within 3
months?
months after completion of the building?
Okay.
Depending on
Installation
weather.
of the plan.
Yeah,
Okay,
depending on the weather.
okay. Then we have to have another vote.
Implementation of the plan, landscape plan, within 3 months of completion of the building,
Weather permitting.
weather permitting. Okay, speak, Mike.
So it's a motion to amend the motion of the condition.
I so move.
Second. Here's a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me?
Okay. We've got 1 opposed.
Okay.
So now what we have is a motion on the table to approve the conditional, or the
Special use.
special use permit with the conditions.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Excuse me.
It was all those in favor? Aye, and opposed? Are you-
Same sign.
Same sign.
Same sign.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're opposing, yes, you're opposing the motion that to.
Everything.
For the conditions.
Correct.
Okay.
For everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we have to have that so noted, so do we need a roll call vote?
I would like a roll call vote.
Yes, that was the plan. Svoboda,
Yes.
Hinsman,
No?
Mogan,
Yes.
Reese,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Woolsey.
No.
My name's.
With 4 yes votes, 2 no votes, we have moved to approve the special use permit with conditions as stated on the record.
Thank you. I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You just want to whack something.
I've only ever used it once. And believe me,